Recruiting. You probably now think, that's something HR does. And when you think that this is the solution to your worries and probably concerns about future talent, I have to tell you, it's not only HR. It's not only HR. Today, we're going to talk about modern recruiting. Is your recruiting up to date? And a whole and quite wild year is behind us. And one thing just recently on LinkedIn caused massive outrage. And so first, when someone says something which you disagree with, I always please stay calm and please give a fact-based comment. Do not put your rage on there. This person had to disable their LinkedIn profile for a while. It's now back online, but without a picture and without the company in there, so the person can't be found that easily. So what happened there? What happened was this person posted a couple of weeks ago and said, when someone is late for the interview, I never hire them. Reason, bad time management. And of course, that is a bit, let's just put narrow-minded, because I can tell you something. I'm in London right now. If someone comes to an interview and shows up late, I'm not happy about that. However, I always ask, is everything okay? And when they say, look, mate, a tube was cancelled, so I had to take the tube after, that's why I'm 10 minutes late. That is something where I have to say you need better planning and better time management. Fully agreed. However, when someone says, look, I'm half an hour late because I'm a single parent and one of my children fell off the chairs, fell off the stairs, and I really had to take care of them, I'd be happy with you being an hour later or showing up next day as long as you tell me even briefly. And that is perfectly fine because things happen. I don't have family, I don't have children. And by the way, when children fall off the stairs, taking care of them has priority over telling me that you turn up late, obviously. So you need to be situational, a situational approach, a situative approach to what you decide there. And this person not only caused a bit of criticism there, it went way, way worse a couple of weeks later. A couple of weeks later, this person posted and said, if someone is early, as someone just was to an interview, they were 25 minutes early, I never hire them because they have bad time management. They think that their time is more important than my time, and that can't be true. So I don't hire them. And that is just one aspect of the many, many random arbitrary things we have in recruiting. Of course, when someone is early, there might be many reasons. Maybe you live somewhere where a bus goes only every 30 minutes and you either can be narrowly on time or you're way too early. And of course, when you're a good person and you have the opportunity and the options to do so, you show up early. There's nothing wrong with being early. The person maybe has to wait a bit. And you shouldn't be annoyed with that. Being too early, sorry, when you hold this against someone, you are on the same level as someone who also this year posted, another manager, who said they always go for lunch with people who apply for jobs. And when they put salt and pepper in their food, before they even tasted it, they never hire them because they have prejudices. Sometimes I wonder, I mean, you can't make this up. Sometimes I wonder, how can people actually think that this is anywhere near a potentially viable option for recruiting? Because maybe someone says, I love an absurd amount of pepper in my food. I just love an absurd amount of, and I know that no one would put that much pepper in a piece of food on a plate as I do. It's just experience. So that's why you put pepper in there. It's actually preparation. You know what happens, so you are prepared. Saying, by the way, salt or pepper on a dish is the reason why you accepted someone or turned someone down is a wildly unscientific assumption. And we have so many arbitrary aspects of recruiting that today we have to talk about, is your recruiting up to date? And also, is it actually up to date for the year 2026? So when we talk about recruiting, one aspect, of course, is here when people say, okay, look, this is something HR does. Problem number one. When you think recruiting is only an HR process, you think it's a process, not a strategy. But basically, you have an organization. The organization exists for itself. And outside of the organization is something with HR. That's, by the way, one of the reasons why often when you are at trade fairs or expos and you ask people, what does your business do? They can tell you anything in the wildest, tiniest detail. And then the hand goes up and says something. And then there's HR, recruiting and people, I don't know, something. And then there's IT. They do like, computers, something, tech, basically anything with power supply. So, and there you see what the issue is. People do not see HR as what it is. HR is a process. Sorry, HR is a strategy. It is part of your value creation as an organization. HR is strategy, not a process. Of course, within HR, you have processes for the recruiting process, obviously. However, it is a strategy, not a process. When you think that recruiting is something external, I have to say, not a good look. That's not a wise choice. And as soon as your recruiting begins, the number one thing you have to take care of is candidate first design. And I give you a very simple example. People apply somewhere, and then someone says, oh, you have to fill out this form. And the form begins with, could you upload your PDF here with your CV? So they upload the CV as a PDF, prepared, perfect. And then on the next page, it says, oh, could you please put all your different experiences in there? And of course, you wonder, why did I have to upload the PDF in the first place then? So why do you have to do things double and triple? And then the answer from that organization is, yeah, we have this, we have applicant management system in place, and there are different fields that need to be filled, and you need to populate the data into these fields. By the way, if you do that way, if you say upload the PDF here and then manually put anything into these fields, that already gives a very clear evidence of how up to date your IT is. And people will most likely say, if they really have other options, they say, yeah, well, probably I'm not going to work here. So very important is candidate first design. It's always about the candidate, because when the candidate subjectively says, no, not you. Of course, you can always say, well, you shouldn't stop people who want to leave. Just let them leave. Yeah, but then don't complain about a lack of talent. If you have a non-up-to-date recruiting process, do not complain that people say actually work somewhere else. And this process that you provide here needs to have radical transparency. I give you a very simple example. People apply, and then you say, oh, there's an interview. Perfect. So you have an interview, and it goes really well. And then you ask at the end, okay, is this it? Or is there going to be an on-site meeting after the telephone call or the online meeting? And then they say, oh, yeah, there's an on-site meeting, yeah. So you have an on-site meeting. At the end of that, you say, okay, so decision, when do I? Oh, no, no, no. You also have to talk to Jane and to Peter and to Noah and to Samuel and to Jamal and to Thomas. And people reasonably wonder, why? Why do I have to do this? When did we start to think that just because anyone who opens their mouth and says, I want to talk with any applicant that is going to join the team, why do we think that this is anywhere near value creation? Because it's not. It's very simply not. People just want to be heard, but not in a good way. They want to put self-display, ego forward. And basically, they also want to filter people and say, if I don't like you, you're not going to work here. And of course, someone has to be a fit for the team, but liking and disliking someone doesn't necessarily mean if someone fits into a team. I give you a very simple example. Let's say you hire someone for a sales team, and suddenly you give one round to another account executive. And they realize, oh, damn, that person's really good. Might be a danger to me. I don't want to have any danger in my position, so I'm going to say this person's not a fit for the team. So we're not going to hire them. We're just not going to hire them. Not happening, because I really don't want to have competition on the team. I want to stay in my comfort zone. So no, it's a straight no from me. And that is the problem. Radical transparency means, yeah, you have to tell people what is the process from the very beginning. Only relevant people have to be part of the process. So when you hire someone as the assistant of the CEO, obviously the CEO has to talk with them. Perfectly reasonable. Does any other person on the board have to talk with them? Absolutely not. Does any other person in the process, any department, they have to talk with them? Absolutely not. This whole we have, and by the way, every single round raises the expectations towards what is the package you offer them. When you have 5, 4, 6, 7 rounds, I can tell you, so not only do you go against scientific evidence, because there is no scientific evidence that more rounds need to lead to better candidates, especially when you randomly allow anyone into recruiting. Many people only want to sort out the people who are dangerous to them, and they also want to say at the annual appraisal interview, look, I do recruiting, I'm important, talent, where's my salary raise? So be sure that radical transparency does not mean anyone is allowed to put their name forward to have another round with the applicant, because that doesn't lead to anything sustainable. If you now say, okay, what is the more sustainable approach? The more sustainable approach is that you have hyper personalization. I give you a very simple example here from the real world as well. When people apply and they get to this application form when you have one, and then they realize it's the same form for it's the same form for department leader, team lead, operations people, and even students who work here. It's the exact same form, and only on top you choose for which job you apply. Then of course people will drop out. Hyper personalization means you ask as little and as basically ask the least amount of questions you have to ask. So, for example, if you say, we need people who have a driver's license, perfectly reasonable question to say, hey, have a driver's license? Or when you say, we need people who have the license to operate forklifts, reasonable question to say, do you have a license to operate forklifts? However, when you just ask, okay, what is your travel destination number one? Tell me. And people wonder, what? I am I want to be factory worker, and they told me I'm in logistics, so I have to put parcels from A to B into trucks and out of trucks. My favorite travel location? What do you expect me to say here? So hyper personalization means it needs to be it needs to be reasonably tailored to the person applying, not sticking only to your processor or even worse, your speed of software. And of course, when you now say, yeah, we are very personal and that's why we are slower. Bad news here, you have to deliver speed and quality. As Will Kintish, who's probably the most well-known networker in the UK, always states in his book and his workshops, speed stuns. You need to be able to fascinate people with how quickly you react. When you apply the right way in my business, you get an answer from Monday to Friday at least on the same day or next day. No exception. And it's very important to deliver speed and quality. And by the way, including your true network, no insider deals, no cheating, no someone can bypass the process and others don't really have a chance, but we pretend that they have. Nothing of that nonsense. Speed and quality have to be delivered. You always have to see one aspect. As soon as they apply, from first contact to the moment you hire them, it's 28 days or less. When you go slower, you will only get answers from the people who are left. And I can tell you, they are left for a reason. Another hint, not a good reason. The reason is no one wants them. And now you have to pick them. And at the end, you have to complain about, oh, talent is so bad. No, it's just you being so slow. You have to deliver on the promise of speed and quality. And when you make decisions, very important here, I know when it comes to decisions, people say, I don't say anything about the decision because I'm afraid of a lawsuit. When you are in a country where any kind of reasoning may lead to a lawsuit, I can understand that you only give generic answers. For example, anyone was amazing, but someone else was more amazing than you. You're still amazing. Sorry, not you. Thank you. I can understand that because very easily you might end up in court otherwise. Give a generic answer. However, anyone has the right to an answer. The omnipresent level of ghosting that we see at the moment. And it gets worse by the minute with excuses such as, oh, we are understaffed, we don't have enough people in HR, we don't have the software, we don't have this, we don't have that. Just imagine someone does that with you and they say, yeah, you want me to have a driver's license, but I don't have it. You want me to operate forklifts, don't have the license. You want me to work early hours, can't do that. You want me to work weekends, can't do that. But you still have to hire me. So you're asking to be accepted while you show unacceptable behavior. So be sure that everything you decide is evidence-backed. The burden of proof is always with you. Internally, of course, first. When you say there's a high risk of a lawsuit, you give generic answers. We all accepted that. Unfortunately, that is, by the way, something when people vote for parties who put these laws in place, you get generic answers as a response. But especially when people apply for higher level leadership positions, there the risk of a lawsuit is pretty low often, and people want to have a good answer and give them a good answer. Because when you say, yeah, all amazing, but you weren't the most amazing, that is something where people very quickly say, I don't think that is the real answer. And you can give me an answer, you just don't want to put the effort in it. And that's just poor show then from your side, which usually ends with bad ratings on Kununu and Glassdoor. So be sure that you put everything forward that you actually have, including the evidence that you have. People love good feedback, even when it sometimes says it's not going to be you. The question now is, how do you implement everything? As soon as you want to implement that, number one, maybe, because often people say, oh, yeah, we do something with AI. That's the usual answer at the moment, something with AI. And AI is tremendously helpful. You know that I got my AI education from the University of Pennsylvania, Wharton Business School, Vanderbilt, and there's going to be another qualification or a couple of them in a couple of weeks. You will find that on LinkedIn then. However, AI is not the solution to absolutely anything. When people receive AI answers, they often can spot them. Probably this is going to be solved in a couple of years or even in the near future. But I just recently did a test where they put 15 emails in front of me. 14 out of 15 I classified correctly as either AI or handwritten. When people have a phone call with you, they know what your personality is, they know how you talk, and as soon as they then suddenly get an artificial AI email sounding like a letter from a legal department, they are probably not too fascinated about that. And they say, oh, you play nice, but at the end, you're just another organization that doesn't tailor anything. It's just all talk, no trousers. So, yes, AI, but yes, plus to brains. Use your brains, please. People love to work with humans, and that is not even new. This cannot possibly be new to you. At least I hope so. So be sure that you always tailor things, not only using AI. Don't just put some AI slop out there. By the way, when you don't know what AI slop is, watch the episode of from John Oliver last week tonight about AI slop. AI slop is something that young people use as some generic blah blah that AI puts out there, either in pictures or in writing. AI slop means something an AI created, but which is basically useless. So don't use the AI. Don't put AI slop there. We have enough of that already on the internet. In addition to that, always be sure it's always a two-way assessment. You, of course, say the person needs to prove that we can hire them. Well, you also need to prove that they want to work for you. And I know this is a hard pill to swallow for many, and very quickly people end up with, oh, but back in the days people weren't so. Yeah, but back in the days is not today. You have to deal with what is today, and today you find that it's always a two-way assessment. People are less afraid of even facing unemployment because they say, look, there's such a high pressure on the market on talent. And there's a talent shortage. There's even a workforce shortage. They need to hire someone. So I'm not going to work somewhere where I really hate it from the interview start point. It's always a two-way assessment. The person applies for a job in your organization, but you also apply to be their preferred employer. And there's always more than one. Be sure about that. And in addition, of course, you need to have diversity in place. Anyone, by the way, now screaming this is woke and left wing is the first person basically signing up for I'm in the category of IQ 75 points and less. So you need, of course, to have diversity. Your recruiters need to be well trained, by the way. There is nothing more ridiculous when you have someone in a recruiting position, first round of recruiting, a very junior recruiter speaks to a very senior lead manager who applies for a certain job, and then they say, oh, no, sorry, you're doing leadership wrong, while this recruiter never led anything. So be aware that recruiters need to be well picked. And then, of course, they need to have good software, the tech, the data. Trust and relationship building is at the core of each recruiting activity because people decide often when they have multiple choices, they always think, what is the organization taking best care of me? And what is the organization where I can thrive the most, have an amazing career, but also a really good time? And they are willing to work for less money as long as you don't go below a certain threshold they have in mind. They are willing to work for less money when they say it's a cultural fit and a personal fit. I can tell you from my experience, even as someone who's self-employed, there are clients where I work for different fees compared to others, and that is perfectly normal, by the way. That is something anyone does. It always depends, of course, the effort, what they expect. However, when someone is just really obnoxious, it gets way more expensive because I know it's going to be a harrowing job to work for you. And maybe I even walk away. That's something I did just a couple of weeks ago, probably for the second time in 25 years. I said, sorry, just absolutely not a fit to anything. How you deal with people is just wildly overstepping the mark. You even do that towards me. So no, not me. Very important is trust and relationship building is at the core of each recruiting business. You see, it's a lot of work. However, when you do it the way we just discussed, and that of course is only a tiny, tiny amount of things you need to do. But if you start with these aspects and you put them in place, then your recruiting will not only be better, it will be future ready for the year 2026. And I wish you all the best putting that in place in your organization. And when you now say, whoa, I need to discuss something here, feel free to do so. So first, when you watch me on YouTube, leave a like here, subscribe to my channel. Feel free to leave a comment or a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. 5 stars are much appreciated. Thank you very much for doing so. Recommend the channel or the podcast, videocast on anything you have, friends, colleagues, social media, anywhere you like. A bonus we have only on YouTube called the YouTube Shorts, our leadership tips. These come out, at least a couple of them we put out there every week. More than 100 are already online. Be sure to sign up for them. So it pays off to not only subscribe to the channel, but also put the little bell in there so you get a tiny notification as soon as something new pops up on the channel so you're always up to date regarding leadership. And of course, you can also follow me on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or go to my website, nb-networks.biz, where you can see what I do for a living. When you now say, which is perfectly reasonable, I want to discuss something, but not publicly, that is what most people, by the way, choose still, is they send me an email. nb@nb-networks.com is my email. Just feel free to send me an email there. I'm looking forward to hearing from you there. If you now say, I heard about live sessions, yes, we have them. When you go to expert.nb-networks.com, you can put your email address in there, and no worries, you only receive one email every Wednesday morning. It's 100% content ad-free guarantee. And in that email, you then receive full access to all the articles I published in English and German in the English and German language. More than 400 are online already. Then full access to all the podcasts, fully online, available via the leadership letter in English and in the English and German language as well. No paywall, no tricks, no nothing. All for free for you, all available. And in the leadership letter, you always find the date, the time, and the access link for the live sessions. We only advertise the live sessions via our leadership letter. So I'm looking forward to seeing you there. And of course, you can also connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me on Instagram, like me on Facebook, or subscribe to my channel on YouTube. However, the most important thing is always the last thing that I say. Apply, apply, apply what you heard in this podcast, because you will only see the positive change that you want to see in your organization when you apply what you heard here. If you now have anything to say, anything to discuss, feel free to drop me an email or contact me on any other channel. I answer every single message within 24 hours. And by the way, no matter what you say, if it's just a general discussion, cool, let's go. Many great discussions. Thank you very much to all the people who discussed with me during the last couple of weeks and months in this year. Very, very topical and content focused, very reasonable. Thank you very much to the vast majority of you. Thank you very much for doing so. If you say, hey, we need something very specific, we need a trainer, a coach, a speaker, a mentor, we need someone in project interim management, very happy to discuss that as well. So open to anything really. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. At the end of this podcast and at the end of this video cast, there's always the most important thing I have to say: put things in place, because that is what really makes your organization change for the better. I wish you all the best doing so. And at the end of the podcast, as well as the end of the video cast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.